Hey guys, welcome back to the GM's Table. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody to like, share, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. If you want to help out the channel more than that, and a deeper level, get videos early, get access to PDFs, boom, Patreon, it's going to scroll into here too. These are the people who are currently supporting, and I thank all of you. Anyways, getting into this is a tutorial video for Basic Fantasy RPG. Honestly, I didn't think I'd be making this, but over the weekend, somebody on the Dark Age of Basic Fantasy group asked are there any tutorial videos, and I thought about it and realized there aren't, and I found that weird. I think it's one of those things, especially with OSR, that a lot of us take it for granted, that most of us are old hands at this, or we're fine picking up a game like Basic Fantasy because we loved Basic Edition D&D. We have roots in it. So we don't need all this translation. But that's not going to help us bring new people in. And maybe some people just aren't as apt at learning new games. And people have gotten used to video tutorials. So I figured, you know what? Hey, I had some free time. I'm going to record this. That also means if my audio isn't perfect, if my lighting's a little off, if you hear my kid in the background, it's because this isn't a fully scheduled video, but I wanted to get this done. Now, with that, the thumbnail showed a crash course, and that's because that's what this is. This isn't going to go page by page through the book. We're going to discuss kind of what is Basic Fantasy, in the sense we know what game it's based off of, some of the big differences, and then kind of run down the need to know to get someone new started. So, with that, we're going to go, boop, we have a PDF up here, so I can have some pages. Do note, I'm going to say page numbers on the PDF. It's plus, I think, 4. The PDF numbering and the page numbering isn't identical, but I'm going to say page numbers because the book is so cheap. Most of us have it in physical format, but I have the PDF up so you can see stuff. I feel okay with showing pages of the book. I will be honest, I don't typically do that. But this is a free product digitally, so I don't feel like showing it is taking work the writers have done and giving it away for free. It's already for free. Now, if you've come across this, you've never played Basic Fantasy, first and foremost, I will also put a link to their download page in the doobly-doo, because this game, the print versions, you buy at cost. This is something like $5 on Amazon. And the digital versions, including other books and even supplements that aren't in print, all of it is free and legally free. Chris Gonnerman is awesome. He wants this game to be free for everybody, and he has made sure that is the fact. All right, so moving on. First and foremost, what is Basic Fantasy? If you're unfamiliar, Basic Fantasy is more or less a remake or a recreation or even kind of a reimagining of Basic Expert Edition D&D. Not Advanced D&D, just kind of the BX D&D. It has some big differences. Probably the biggest is that it uses AC, which is the armor class system from D&D 3.5 onward, instead of THATCO, which us old hands know it. It's the 2-hit AC 0. I don't need to explain THATCO because it's not in this game. The other big difference is you get to pick your race and your class. In old Basic Edition, being a dwarf, being a halfling, being an elf was your class. Now you can be a dwarven thief or a dwarven warrior. So that's also different. Not massive changes. In fact, there's very much of this game is how you remember it feeling to play for a lot of it, at least how I remember it feeling to play. So jumping in, I'm going to be typing in page numbers so we can kind of jump through the parts. First thing we want to cover, the races. If you're completely new to this, the races for Basic Fantasy are the baseline. Every D&D game has them. You got your dwarf, you got your elf, you got your halfling, and you got your human. Something to note if you're used to 3.5 D&D or further or Pathfinder, races are not giving you attribute bonuses, and they're not giving you attribute penalties. In fact, instead, they have requirements. You have to have a minimum attribute to be a specific race. Again, not going into every single one. as well as every race has an attribute that rather than being a penalty, they can't have higher than a normal maximum. Everybody else, it's maximum 18. Things like halflings have a max 17 strength. The only exception is humans. Humans have no limits because that's kind of always the point of them. And in place of it, they get plus 10% XP. So if you don't get attribute bonuses, why do you take these other races? Well, a lot of them give you dark vision, or they'll give you bonuses to finding secret passages and secret doors, and we're going to get into that, the rules for that, because it's a little different in this kind of game. As well as stuff like halflings get AC bonuses, and probably the biggest one is they get save bonuses, because when we talk about saves, it's vastly different than what you may be used to. Moving on from that, though, we then have our classes. I'm going to go into these classes a little deeper, but first I want to do an initial overview of, you got 4 classes, and you got the 4, like, cornerstone classes. You got the Cleric, you got the Fighter, you got the Magic User, and you got the Thief. If you're used to where's the Rogue, well, Rogue used to be Thief, and here it's Thief. Where's the Wizard, or so it's Magic User. Now, we're going to go into each of these. First, you'll notice they each have their own XP table. XP and how much XP it takes to level is different for every class. You can mod the game and stuff. I've done it, but old D&D, we're talking about this book, this game, every class has different XP because that's one of those equalizers for the classes. And what kind of become the beefier classes, especially late game, tend to require more XP. I personally don't feel like it's quite lined up with the Fighter, but that's how the Fighter was, so it's nothing to argue with here. It's recreating the older game. Now, into each class, what's going to be drastically different than what you may expect, especially, I'm going to kind of go from, coming from maybe 5th edition, or Pathfinder, more modern D&D type games. We're going to start with the Cleric. The first thing you're going to notice with the Cleric is they do not get spells at first level. Okay? Clerics get spells at second level because clerics also get armor and they can use blunt weapons. So they get into a fight and duke it out a bit. Because of that, they don't get spells till second level. Your cleric is not casting heal until they survive for 1500 XP. That's how it is. Now, another thing to note, what I noted down the page number for it. There it is. Alright, so I think that's 54. Clerics also get turn undead. A big reason why I'm doing the pages, and I want to talk about pages, is because this book also jumps around a bit with some stuff. With the clerics, we're going to go to page 50 in the book, which should be page 54, and here is turn undead. Clerics get turn undead, but it's way further in the book for your table. So if you're playing a cleric, you're probably going to want to take this table, copy it down, or bookmark this page in your book. And more or less what this is clerics get a number of hit die of undead they can turn any given time. It's in dice. You roll it to see how many hit die. And say there's like 6 skeletons coming up at you, and each skeleton, say, had 2 hit die. That's 12 hit die. If you didn't roll 12, well, you do 2, and then 2, and then 2, like that. You also need to successfully turn them. You roll a d20. Here is your table. Remember, this emulates old school gaming, so you're going to have a lot of table lookups. This table is very important for the clerics, alright? You roll your d20. What'd you hit? If you're at level 1, if you got a 13, well, you can do 1 hit die creatures. Their example is a skeleton. I said they were 2 hit die. I flipped skeletons. Zombies are 2 hit die. That's my bad. If you rolled a 17, you can turn 2 hit die monsters. If you roll a 19, 3 hit die monsters. This is the hit die of the individual creature, where you also roll your d6s to see how many hit die of those creatures you turn. Alright, so jumping back, I think it was page 11. Yeah. That's really it for clerics. We won't go into the spells. The big thing about clerics, though, is they know all their spells, which is huge. Because when we get into magic users, you're going to realize, oh my god, that's massively powerful. Then we go into the fighter. Fighters are 100% what's on the box. They get access to any weapon. They can wear any armor, and they end up getting the best attack bonus as they level. They also have really good hit die, so really good hit points. That is it. Fighters in basic fantasy, if we're not using any supplements or anything, we're just talking about core book, have no special abilities. This is actually a good thing. This is a great first character to play for people, okay? You just have to know how AC works and how attack bonuses work. That's it. And that's something everybody's going to need to know anyways. Fighter lets you be the everyman, okay? In fact, the fighter attack bonus goes all the way to 1, and then above that, which is NM, the normal man. The normal man is on the fighters column because fighters are really just normal people with better and better training or becoming more and more heroic. They don't have special abilities. They don't have widgets or mechanics to keep track of. Then you have the magic user. The magic user is a wizard. The magic user and the thief both have the lowest hit die of the game. Magic users can't wear armor. They can wield daggers. I believe in basic you can also wield a staff. Like, they have very limited. They have the lowest attack bonus. We're going to get into attack bonuses. And they get spells. They get to start the game with read magic and one other spell. GM can decide if you roll randomly, we're going to get into that, or pick to start. The big thing to note that is different from what you may be used to for wizards and those kind of characters in newer games is, by core rules, without house ruling, magic users, when you gain levels, you gain spell slots. You do not automatically learn new spells. You will have to find spells. You will have to research spells if you want new spells. You'll get more slots. You'll become a more powerful caster, but you don't automatically learn new spells. This is a big difference for a lot of players in my experience. So do be ready for that. They also have the highest XP to gain for each level. They have 2,500 to get to level 2. Okay? I'll give you an example. Next to him's the thief. 2,500's level 3. A magic user is almost consistently exactly one level behind the thief. And it does actually get even worse as time goes on. But that's more or less how it rolls. Really, that's the only thing you need to know. I'll touch on spells a little bit right now. Magic users get one first level spell at level 1, and that's it. It's 1. There's no extra spells for ability modifier, none of that stuff. That is fine, actually, because when you look at the spells in this game, these are the old school spells. Magic has a punch. One of my favorite examples is the light spell. A spell people take for granted. It's like, oh, yeah, in newer editions, it's a freaking cantrip. Because, oh, yeah, I make things shine with light. Okay. Yeah, this lasts tens of minutes. Like, it can last hours if you're a high enough level caster. And most importantly, it's light, and it's also darkness. You can prepare it to be the inverse. Inverse spells are a thing in Basic Edition. Not every spell has it, but they'll mark it. They'll let you know which ones do. Most importantly, though, light, even light, is a combat spell in this game. Whether it's light or darkness, you can cast it on an opponent's eyes, and if they fail their save and it's on them, they are blind for the duration of the spell. Remember, I said this spell can last hours. Yeah, that's a first level spell. So just because you see, oh, I only get one spell per day. Web. Light, it's useful, and in combat it can take one guy just out. Web, boom, here's a zone where enemy is screwed. Spells in Basic Edition are game changers even at first level. Yes, there is Magic Missile of, oh, okay, I dealt some damage, but it's an auto hit, and in Basic, that's actually a big deal. So don't underestimate the fact that a wizard or a magic user only gets one spell. Finally, we have the Thief. The Thief has the fastest XP track, and they have actually probably, I would say, the most special abilities, because they get Backstab. Backstab is sneak attack, but it isn't. Okay, if you're coming in from newer D&D games and all that, do know it's not quite the same. You have to be completely hidden until the moment your blade goes into them. They have to be totally unaware of you, not just, oh, I hid, so I get to sneak attack. No. And there's none of this, oh, I have an ally with me, so now I can sneak it. No. You're going to get it once if you plan for it in an encounter. The advantages of it, you get +4 to hit if they're not aware you're there. So really good to hit. And if you hit, you deal double damage, which is essentially an automatic crit. They can take people out, but it's very difficult to get. Do not go into Thief going, oh, I'm all the damage. No, that's a fighter. Fighters are the guys who wade in and they kick butt. Thieves kind of have this trick up their sleeve so they can deal a ton of damage by showing how clever they are. The main thing a thief gets, luckily these are right there with the class, unlike Turn Undead, is the thief abilities. Thieves get skills. No one else gets skills. There's ways to do it, and there's supplements for it, but as far as the core book's concerned, what makes a thief special is they have skills, and their skills are literally, they have a percentage chance to do something. You need a lock open, a first level thief has a 25% chance to just pop that lock. That's kind of their big thing. They get opening locks, they get removing traps, they get picking pockets, moving silently. Again, if you want that sneak attack, you need moving silently. Climbing walls, which they're actually very good at even to start. Hide, and listen. There creates some issues of, well, but the thief has listens, what about everybody else? Well, when we get into things like noticing secret doors and stuff like that, typically how you do, oh, do you know, I look for a secret door. All right, well, if there's one there, the GM rolls a d6. If they rolled a 1 on the d6, you found it. No modifier, it's not a skill check, it's just a chance. This is where things like being an elf matters, because elves, for secret doors, roll a 1 or a 2. Thieves, don't worry about that. They just go, if I got a skill that covers it, we're going to roll a percentage chance instead. Because these come out better than the d6 chance. And they improve even further. Without getting in, again, I don't want to get too much in the nitty-gritty. Halflings also get a percentage skill thing when it comes to hiding. And it is worth noting, if you're a halfling thief, you pick which one to roll, which is typically you pick which one's better. So at low levels, the halfling bonus is going to be better, and then eventually the thief will become better, and being a halfling doesn't matter as much. You don't add them. At least not by the rules. Your GM may let you, but you don't add them together. That's our classes. That's really it. Now we're getting into gear and money and all of that. So, the next big thing, I talked about attack bonuses. Well, yeah, 50 on the PDF. So page 46 in the book is attack bonuses. This table, if you are running the game, if you are a GM or a DM, officially that's copywritten. If you're a GM, bookmark this page or copy this table. This table you will need. Mainly because the monster stat blocks in the game, the higher hit die ones will have brackets to remind you what the base attack bonus is. The lower ones, hit die is equal to base attack, but they don't remind you that, so you might forget. Additionally, if you have NPCs, if you have any human who has levels in something, you're going to need this. This one table has the attack bonuses for everyone. You go to what your class is, you go down to what your level is, you go across to see what your attack bonus is. As you see, the fighter goes all the way up to a +10. Clerics and thieves eventually max out at a +8. And magic users max out at a +7. The rate at which they do that shifts. Monsters max out at 32 or more hit die. Huge monsters. Scary, scary monsters. +16. Monsters will eventually get way more powerful than the players. That's fine. That's part of the game. This is a deadly game. Now, when it comes to attack rolls, you do get to add your ability modifier. You get to add your strength modifier for melee, your dex modifier for range. You add strength for melee damage. You do not add dex for range damage. As far as the modifiers are concerned, I think that's the right. No, wrong page. There we go. The modifier, again, if you're used to 3.5 D&D or further, or newer, or Pathfinder, or any of the OGL games that were based on those mechanics, these modifiers are different. I also want to bring this up because, especially if you're rolling character stats, which is what they suggest, and you have a player go, I rolled a 9, I'm awful. Remember, a 9 to a 12 is a 0. That is the average range. Then a 13 to a 15 is a +1. A 8 to a 6 is a -1. That's a huge gap for just plus to -1. 16, 17 is +2. 4 or 5 is -2. And in 18, a perfect score is only a +3. Not this +4, being able to eventually push it to a 20, a +5. That's not how it is. And a 3, if they roll all ones across for a stat, it's a -3. It's rough, but it's not game ending. It really isn't. All right, what other stuff do we need? Okay. Sorry, as I said, this was a little impromptu. Oh, I wanted to talk about saves, because again, this part's important for players and for GMs. 57 on the PDF, page 53. This is another page you will need to have bookmarked. This page you have to GM or player, because the monster stats will say saves as a fighter of X level. Stuff like that. These tables are them. You have 5 saves. You have, in fact, we're going to zoom this up a little bit. I'm about to disappear a bit so I can show this better for you guys, because this is pretty important. All right, you have Death Ray or Poison. The Death Ray tends to be I don't know, but it's a save versus death kind of thing, or Poison, same save. Magic Wands is a separate save from spells. If someone's casting from a wand, the save is actually different. Paralysis or Petrify, both their own effects, but they have the same save bonus. And Dragon Breath. Another way to look at this, if you're used to if you're used to newer games, is Dragon Breath is typically kind of like your dodging save. Dragon Breath isn't exclusive to dragons. There are traps that might have the save versus dragon. It's where you have to kind of duck and roll out of the way of something. Paralysis and Petrify is that, just hold to from magical or supernatural effects that freeze you. Poison, self-explanatory. Death Ray falls in the poison. And that does bring up, I want to bring something up. There's optional rules we're going to get to, but poison in this game, if you're using just the standard poison rules, is you failed to save against poison, the poison killed you. Be prepared for that. They do have an optional rule in the back, we're going to get to it, to keep poison from always being insta-death. And then, as I said, there's spells and there's magic wands. Spells is basically the save for every spell unless it specifically says like Dragon Breath or Petrify or something like that, which is very rare. I actually can't even think of any, but it feels like it might be there. Wands is one that actually took me a while because it's been a long time since I played this. They don't actually have a breakdown specifically. Here's when you do this save, here's when you do that save for a lot of this. Wands is never brought up. But if someone used a wand, that's when you use wands instead of spells. You could also rule that is if it's coming from a magic item instead of an actual caster, use wands, because wands are just a magic item with charges. It's actually an interesting thing about the item creation we'll eventually get to, but this is one of the most important pages you're going to deal with in the game. Running the game or playing it, you need this page marked. All right, I think that covered everything you really need for players. We're going to get into some GM stuff. Namely, we're going to get into the monster thing and the reaction stuff, because they're both really important. So I'm jumping to 58 in the book. Whoa, it's actually the next page. So this monster page, read it. If you're running the game, just read it. Read this whole page. Read every word in this page, because this breaks down all the stuff you need to know for monster stats. All right, how many appear? If you do note, if they say how many appear, this is to give you ideas and guidelines. If you have a story in mind, story trumps dice in basic fantasy, in a lot of OSR games. If you're like, there's a cave that has only one owlbear, don't look at the number appearing of owlbear. It had one owlbear, you know this. But when it comes to random encounters, stuff like that, your number appearing is going to really matter. Beast Burn here. This is some examples of what the monster stats look like. You need to note that monsters, how they do their XP and all that. I might actually do a whole video on calculating that, because when you make NPCs and characters with levels, you got to do the XP on your own. There's a table in here, but if you're just starting, you can really just use the stuff that's already been pre-made. So I'm not getting into how to do all of that. I don't want this video to take forever. Like I said, this isn't every little piece of the book. But this page, this is going to give you all the info you need for those stat blocks. The only thing it's not going to give you is on page 43, which on the PDF is page 50. This little table is so important. We're back at the... I wrote down the wrong page number. There we go, 43. So it's page 47. I don't know why I wrote 50. So page 47 of the PDF, 43 in your book. This little table, right down here. That's your reaction table. That table is invaluable for RP. You roll 2d6. You modify it by the charisma of the person talking to the thing or interacting with the thing, and it says how they react. If you don't know how a wandering monster might react to a character, roll on this table. Feel free to give bonuses or penalties to the table based on if the monster's already likely to hate them or more likely to attack them, things like that. Give penalties to the roll. It's real simple. It talks about it here, but monster reactions is incredibly useful. I find it funny that they bring up as monster reactions, because this is the only reaction table. This is also very, very useful for NPCs. This is one of those as a GM. Put a little notepad here, or write, it's a very small table, so write it down on a post-it or something. Just get that table down, because that table is going to save you a lot of headache of worrying about, should it be this, should it be that, all that stuff. Finally, now we're getting into kind of the home stretch again, because I just want this to be crash course, very quick, very simple stuff. We're going into the encounter page. It's 144 of the book. On the PDF, it is 148. These tables will help. You have your dungeon tables. Your dungeon tables for random encounters are actually very, very useful because they're based on the level of the dungeon. These can also give you an idea of what characters of a certain level can face somewhat easily. Low-level characters will die anyways. But a level, because that's kind of how old dungeons were. The first level was for level 1 characters, and eventually they got up enough XP and they could go down. And level 2 was more or less 2-hit die monsters. You can face them at level 1, it's going to get scarier. Level 3 was 3-hit die monsters, stuff like that. So this is a really useful... There we go. Thing. And it goes all the way up to 8 and up. Because once you're 8 beyond 8, like the little differences in health really don't matter. It's all deadly. It's all scary. We have wilderness encounters based on environment. This is old school random encounters. Okay? This is not, oh, they're only going to face what they can handle. A level 1 hero, if they only face what they can handle, they won't face anything, because level 1 heroes will die to any bad roll. So that's not kind of the point. There's not this CR system. There's no challenge rating or finite like math to building an encounter. You can be level 1, you can get lost in the woods, the GM can roll a random encounter, and a green dragon can show up. What do the players do? They run. You get out of there. It's up to the players to figure out what they can and can't handle. It's up to the players to get in over their heads and either figure it out or get away. Alright? This isn't a game that worries about balanced encounters or fair encounters. The encounters are what they are. That's one of those things you need to embrace. You can rack your brain and work on building all that and figure out your own system. But as far as the game's concerned, you face what you face. It's the GM's job, especially for the written adventures, to figure out what can my party usually face. Because while the power level of characters matters a bit, especially with how many hit points they have, The skill, creativity, and experience of the players is going to make a much bigger impact on what they can and can't handle. So as your players get more familiar with this game, they can go against tougher things even if their characters aren't higher level. So just be wary of that. This covers so many encounter types or region types. There's also an urban or town village encounter one, and I love that it has daytime encounters and nighttime encounters because cities completely change at night. I love that. This is, again, it's in the encounter section, so it's not like its own thing, but it's really useful. And a breakdown. This is mainly a breakdown of the things you find in the towns because they're like, oh, a gang of thugs, and this tells you how many normal men, how many level 1 fighters, how many level 2 fighters in the group there tend to be. This is also really good for creating organizations or groups, or like things like I had players sailing on a river. I knew they were going to come against some pirates. I just went to the press gang, used those numbers, and then went, but they're pirates instead of a gang. But it gave me the numbers of how many there should be of everybody. Really, really useful stuff. The last section, it's technically 2 sections depending on how you look at it. Page 156 of the book, 152, this is where we get into the optional rules. Death and Dying has some different rules that you can tweak, because old school, you hit 0, you're dead. Just, you died. This, they have some rules for being able to be dying and stuff. This is where you see the save or die poison. There is an optional rule. If you don't like every poison auto kills you, instead, if you fail against a poison, you take damage for 6 rounds. You take 1d6 damage each round for 6 rounds. Higher end characters can survive that, but you actually got to get, that can be up to 36 health. That can kill even like mid-level characters in basic, especially if they didn't roll great for their health. Talk about, here's the one I did want to talk about, ability rolls. This table, if you really want skills and you want it from how the core book does it, this is more or less how they do skills if you aren't a thief or things that aren't thiefy. This is a DC table. You make an attribute roll, you roll a d20 plus your attribute bonus. There's your DC, and the DC goes down as you gain levels. Especially if you're used to like things with skill points or a proficiency bonus where your bonus goes up. This, the DC just goes down. I will say, I'm personally not a huge fan of this because there's no easy or hard checks in this. Instead, if it's easy or hard, you're supposed to add bonuses or penalties to the roll and then keep the DC. And it's looking up a table. Just how my brain works, I tend to flip the math. And that is something worth knowing. If a DC stays the same and your modifiers change, it's the same as if your modifiers change and your DC stays the same. The math just flips around. So it's no less fair. It's no more fair. Just how they do the math is more in line with old school games. So I get why it's this way. There's also, I'm surprised they don't bring up the roll under method, which is where the attribute score actually really matters. Because say you have a 13 dex. You're not looking at your modifiers. If you have a 13 dex, if you want to perform a task that your GM decides is a dex check, you roll your d20. If it's a 13 or lower, you succeeded. If you had a 15 dex, if it's a 15 or lower, you succeeded. So that is one. It's not in this book, but I feel like it should be brought up because it's talked about a lot in these communities. It is a rule that's in the Rules Cyclopedia, which is old BX. So it's worth bringing up. I don't want to confuse people. That is not in this book. How they handle it is this table. And that's fine. They do talk about things of how to tweak thief abilities with levels, all that stuff. But then you get this. Magical research. This is, as I said, how it's laid out, I would think this might be part of the optional rules, but this is vastly important for your magic users. This is the rules on how to research new spells. How to take spell scrolls and learn them permanently. Because remember, those magic users are not learning spells every level. This section, if you're playing a magic user, this section you need. Luckily, it's at the very back of the book. So I would say you need to mark it, but it's like 4 pages from the end or something. This also has the rules for magic item research, which includes magic item crafting. There are level limits on it, but yes, clerics and magic users can make their own items. There's a gold cost in it as well as research, and then they have a percentage chance based off of the power of the item and the power of the spellcaster and all that stuff. It's actually really, really good. So this might be my favorite D&D magic item creation system. So do check that out. That's some fun stuff. Especially your GM might go, you can't make magic items. Be aware of that. But the research is a must know for magic users. And that brings us basically to the end of the book. There's stuff in this book on how to design dungeons. There's more nitty-gritty rules, but that should be your crash course. That should cover everything you need to know to run basic fantasy. This was helpful for some people. Like I said, a lot of us who watch my videos and everything already know these things. But if you have new players, if you have people who might be interested in basic fantasy or are looking to shift over to it, a video showing them what's up might not hurt. Anyways, I'll catch you guys later. Bye. If you like that video, check out another video over here. Whatever it is, it's probably pretty good. Don't forget to like, share so other people can find the channel, and subscribe right up there. YouTube now won't let me put a link to the Patreon, but there is a link down in the description below. So if you want to help support the channel, check that out, and I will catch you guys next time.